Hello YouTube, what is up? This is Smellbringers, and I'll be bringing you some more historical analysis and personal opinion. So, badass women in history. No one ever really likes to talk about badass women in history, and I don't get that. Because there are some seriously badass women in history. I mean, yeah, sure, they'll throw a bone at Joan of Arc, and that's because she influenced French history so much that ignoring her is basically an historical crime. But, I don't know, in my opinion, it feels like that if historians can ignore badass women who shape nations by killing all their enemies, they'll ignore them, which is strangely sexist. But yet, Susan B. Anthony gets all the credit in terms of women's rights, when in reality, all she did was bitch and moan at Congress. Hell, I actually think she died before women got the right to vote. Seriously, that's not badass. That's not cool. No. It's like, Susan B. Anthony is one of the things I hate about history. I don't actually hate the woman herself, but still, it's like, hey, let's ignore these really badass stories about people who just annihilate their enemies and forge nations on top of skulls in order to focus on people who wrote a bunch of interesting papers. That's not cool. That's not interesting. That's why people think history is so damn boring. When in reality, you got women like Boudica, Tomo Agozin, Rani Lakshmi Bai, who, by the way, is less like Joan of Arc and more like William Wallace. You know, Braveheart and all that shinks, which is pretty hardcore. Yeah, I don't even compare her to Joan of Arc. I compare her to William Wallace, because that's how hardcore she was. And we will cover Rani Lakshmi Bai. Trust me. No, we're definitely covering Rani Lakshmi Bai. Not talking about Rani Lakshmi Bai should be considered a historical offense. We're talking about the woman who was one of the main leaders of the 1858 Indian Mutiny. Come on, guys! Get it together! But let's start with the first one who is severely overrated, and that is Boudica. Boudica, the woman who led a Britain war against the Romans. Her story starts off with her husband, the king of a tribe she was queen of. I don't even remember the true name of the tribe, to be perfectly honest. And to be fair, it's not really that important for the story. All you need to know is that it was a Briton tribe. And, well, one day the king died and left a will that said his daughters were rulers. Were now the official rulers. Problem with that is, he also said the Romans were co-rulers with them. Which basically means the power was divided 3 ways. The Romans didn't like this whole 3-way power divide and decided they wanted all the power. So they went, and trust me, when the Romans want something, chances are they'll pretty much kill everyone in their way to get it. It's a thing with the Romans, and if you study history, you'll really notice that the Romans are less in line with the Greeks, who like to write plays and philosophize, and they're more in line with the imperial. They're more in line with the Galactic Empire from the Star Wars series. I'm sorry about that whole tongue mix-up. I just didn't know how to say Galactic Empire. I kept saying Imperial Empire, and then I realized, wait, that's redundant. Galactic Empire. Yeah, the Romans are more in line with the Galactic Empire in terms of how nice they were. Which basically means not very nice at all, actually. It's like a legion of Darth Vaders. It's actually very scary. But they basically rolled into town, said, okay, bitches, we're in charge now. And basically Rani Lakshmi... Wait, sorry, wrong woman. And basically Boudica went, oh, hell no. See this? It says you rule 3 ways along with my daughters. She was whipped for insolence, Boudica. And then, just to show just how much the Romans didn't give a fuck, they then promptly proceeded to rape her daughters. Repeatedly. So yeah, pretty much Boudica's blood rage against the Romans is pretty justified. Because they raped her daughters. Wouldn't you want to destroy an entire empire if you found out they raped your daughters? I'm pretty sure any father worth his genitals said yes. Hell yes. And if you didn't, chances are you really don't care. And that's sad. Chances are. You might just not be prone to overreaction, which is understandable, but still, you'd still be fairly upset. And Boudica was fairly upset about this whole getting flogged and daughter raping thing. So she decided to lead a revolt of the Britons against the Romans, and promptly proceeded to fucking annihilate the Romans. Yeah, that's kind of a thing with history. It takes the Romans a while to get going when you start a conflict with them. But sadly, that's kind of where the party train stops. That is when the Romans actually get going. But in between the time it took the Romans to actually get going, Boudicca pretty much slaughtered everyone in Britain and burned everything bigger than an outhouse. And, whatever wasn't lootable. So, yeah, in other words, a lot of shit got burned, pillaged. And, funny thing is, she burned London to the ground. She has a statue of her prominently placed in London. Think about that. She burned London to the ground, and she's fondly remembered. That's achievement, my friends. However, like I said, the Romans, once they get going, are very hard to stop. And, well, the Romans did get going. Well, actually, they weren't able to send troops to the Empire, so it was up to one guy who basically outwitted Boudicca. Because it turns out, winning all your battles after hundreds of years of oppression kind of makes you overconfident. And the Roman general in charge knew how to use this trait. He used that trait to beat 50,000 Romans with 50,000 Romans? No, 50,000 Britons with 5,000 Romans. Yeah. Basically, the dude... I forgot what he... God, I forgot the specifics. Oh, yeah. He basically got into this very narrow strait with mountains to his back and Boudicca's army right in front of him. And there were also hills to the side of him, so that way Boudicca couldn't charge him from the sides. Basically, a flank attack was impossible. Well, so Boudicca was forced to charge him. And the Roman commander basically just made a phalanx. And for those of you who don't know what a phalanx is, basically imagine a wall of sweet, spiky death. Basically, you're not going to get past a phalanx anytime soon. And Boudicca decided to charge the phalanx. This is known in history as repeatedly banging your head against the wall until you die of sheer stupidity. And that is precisely what happened. The Britons were slaughtered. Because it turns out running against a phalanx is not a wise idea. But still, Boudicca did manage to really give the Romans hell, and for that, she deserves some credit. A lot more credit than she gets nowadays. Seriously, all you heard she did basically rape and pillage the entire countryside of Britain. Like I said, killed everyone and burned everything that was bigger than an outhouse. But still, you have to appreciate her vengeance, right? And to be fair, it was a totally righteous vengeance, considering that whole flogging, daughter raping thing. She actually did have a legitimate point against the Romans. They were being douchebags. But still, she still got owned in the end by the Romans. But, you gotta respect her. You gotta give her some respect. A lot more respect than she gets nowadays. She did appear in the game Rise. She does appear in the game Rise, Son of Rome. But I really don't like Rise, Son of Rome, so I prefer not to look at that. Thank you very much. Okay, so next up is Tomo Egozen. Tomo Egozen is a badass Japanese samurai general chick. Basically, she was awesome and really hardcore. God, I forgot, was it? Oh yeah, she was a Minamoto commander against the... God, I forgot the name. Taiga, something. And she and her commanding officer, yes, she was back up to someone else, but still, she's pretty badass nonetheless. She and her commanding officer basically went around slaughtering their enemies, until eventually her commanding officer became kind of a dick, and everyone around him decided, let's just kill this Minamoto jackass. And so, basically, the commanding officer was a little bit of a, idiot. So he basically just ordered all his men to charge at a gigantic army that was, several times bigger than his was. This ended very poorly for him, and at the end of the day, only 7 samurai were left. One of them was Tomo Egozen. Oh, that plus Tomo Egozen was... never mind, we'll cover that later. And basically, this dude told Tomo Egozen, no, seriously, leave. We're going to freaking die. I'm not going to let you die. Don't stay here. And she's just like, dude, what do I look like? Some kind of pussy? And she just kept wanting to go, and wanting to go, and wanting to go to war. And basically, she eventually gave in. But some legends say that on her way out, she fucking decapitated a dude. Yes, she was trying to leave and some dude basically charged her, and she cut off his head. Well, either cut it off or ripped it off. Yeah, there's a source out there that says she fucking ripped off the dude's head. Held it above, and held it up like she was, like a Braveheart poster, to show that she was still victorious, even in retreat. Man, that's awesome. Oh, and she was a pretty awesome samurai, too. One story has a dude trying to grab her by the hair and, take her out to be his concubine. And she pretty much fucking cuts the guy's arm off and brutally murders the dude. It's pretty sweet story. But that's really all I can really say about Tomo Gozen. She's still a badass chick and does deserve a lot more credit than she gets. So she doesn't have much in terms of her story. That's all. And also, I can't really remember her story that well. I'm going off the top of my head here. Now let's talk about the other hardcore chick, Rani Lakshmi Bai. Rani Lakshmi Bai is perhaps, in my opinion, one of the most underrated historical figures of all time. Well, actually, she is fairly well recognized in Indian culture, from what I understand. But outside of that, no one really knows who Rani Lakshmi Bai is. Hell, I'm pretty sure, hearing that name, I'm pretty sure half of you assume she was Irish. She's not, she's Indian. Which, to be fair, with a name like Lakshmi Bai, you kind of say it in an Irish accent, don't you? I said it in an Irish accent when I first heard it. Lakshmi Bai. See? You totally want to say it in an Irish accent. It's fucking weird. But still, Rani Lakshmi Bai was a pretty hardcore chick. Basically, her thing is that her mother died when she was fairly young, so she wasn't taught all the stupid bullcrap things that Indian women were taught, and was instead taught cool, badass things by her father, like how to handle a sword, how to ride a horse, how to read. Yes, how to read was considered something women didn't learn back then. 1800s India was a very weird time, I know. But still, it's badass considering the time frame, right? Yeah, it is fairly a badass time frame. Now, another thing is that, well, she was eventually married off to some dude, because that's just how culture works in the day. But she didn't lose that hardcore tenacity. When her husband died, and, well, her kid died. Her husband died, her kid died, and she had to adopt a new kid and decided to become his regent, which basically meant she would take power for him until he could come of age. The British, who were currently being dicks at this time, decided they didn't like this idea, and decided, you know what, no, we rule the place now. Same case as the Romans back during the time of Boudica, which is ironic considering we're talking about the British here. But still, Rani Lakshmi Bai basically went, hell no, and decided to try suing. That's not badass, but still, it could have gotten somewhere. Except, no, it didn't, because the same people were trying to dick her out of her lands basically were also so in charge of the British judicial system, which, no, that sucks. Definitely sucks. Well, hang on, I forgot. Okay, quick moment. Oh yeah, so when the whole judicial system thing failed, she basically decided to start a revolt, which led to the Indian Mutiny of 1858. Actually, no, it didn't lead to the 1858 mutiny. It was a result of it's basically a consequence of the 1858 mutiny. Basically, the story goes that when the Indians and Muslims got sick of using cow and pig grease, two animals which they both considered unclean and unsacred, the Indians had the problem that they considered the cow too sacred, and the Muslims considered the pig too far underneath them to actually use their grease. So yeah, they both had a problem with the British and their gun grease. Why did they need the grease? Well, because reloading guns back then was a definitely a stranger case than it is now. You required grease. I don't get that either. What grease has to do with a rifle? I'm assuming it's for cleaning out the rifle. I wouldn't think it's for reloading. It might be, but that would make reloading take a really long time. But still, basically the Indians and Muslims got sick of using cow and pig grease to to clean out their guns, so they decided to revolt. Yeah, it seems kind of weird, but then again, you have to remember religion can do that to people, so yeah. That plus the British had, like, no respect for any religion that wasn't Christianity. They were kind of douchebags at this time, actually, and to be fair, no one really liked them at this time. Well, the British liked themselves, and today a lot of people look fondly back at the British, but back then, everyone was kind of just sick of Britain shit, you know? So they ended mutiny, and Rani Lakshmi Bai, being a smart as hell chick, decided, hell, I'll basically take back my lands that were stolen from me. Which, I haven't mentioned those yet. Those lands were basically the land of Chauncey. Why is it called Chauncey? I don't know, actually. I'm assuming that's what the British named it, because Chauncey sounds so sounds more British than an episode of Doctor Who. Seriously, it's ridiculous. But still, you know, Doctor Who is still significantly more badass than the name Chauncey. Seriously, what the hell's Chauncey? But still, Rani Lakshmi Bai decided she'd take back her land. And so she did. And according to some people, she pretty much slaughtered everyone who was in her lands. Yeah, some people give her a pretty bad rap nowadays. Although some people do state that she came out and decried the whole raping and pillaging of her town thing as mean and not nice. Well, not necessarily raping and pillaging the British people's land, the Indian people's lands, but the British, boy, they did some really bad shit to the British people then. Like, really bad shit. Like, a little overkill. I know you guys are just slightly upset about this whole getting your land stolen and being forced to forsake your religion thing. I don't think slaughtering everyone is a good way to fix your issue. But whatever. Roll with it however you want to. It's still pretty, brutal. And, yeah. Rani Lakshmi Bai was eventually, however, killed during the Indian Mutiny, which, as you might recall, from the fact that, it took a good almost 100 years after that mutiny for India to actually gain independence, you can pretty much sum up the fact that the whole mutiny thing failed, and Rani Lakshmi Bai was killed. Her adopted son was forced to retire by the British, because it was either that or get shot repeatedly. Yeah, the kid probably took the smart option. Not the badass option, but the smart option nonetheless. Now, if you think that these enlightened women who were hard asses and led from the field were rare, there's actually a lot of cases of women being treated a lot better back in the old days than they were during the 1800s. Just saying. Yeah, the Mongols, who you do associate a lot with raping and pillaging, but in reality, women held the most power in Mongolia. Because while men were out, pillaging and slaughtering everything, like I mentioned back in my last video, the women stayed at home and basically ran the place. And you really don't want to piss off the people who run your house. So women had a lot of rights afforded to them. Another good case would be with the Soviet Union, where women were actually allowed to enlist in the army, actually, and were pretty hardcore in the army. You had people like Fighting Girlfriend, who I would like to state hopped out of her tank 3 times to fix it in the middle of a battle. Now, that doesn't sound hard. You have to remember, there are people who are already taking pot shots at your tank. So if they see a very small, squishy human being hopping out of the tank to fix it, they will try to shoot said squishy human being. So the fact that our quote-unquote Fighting Girlfriend, that's how she called herself. I honestly forgot her real name, so I decided to go with her nickname. Which, to be fair, her story is pretty bad. To be fair, the whole hopping out of her tank a few times and preparing it thing is pretty badass, but her reasons for starting it is basically the same as Boudica, and that is her boyfriend was killed. Her husband. Her husband was killed fighting the Germans, and she decided that she was going to get some sweet, bloody revenge. Pretty much the same reason as Boudica. Well, not necessarily daughter raping, but husband death still sucks on the same ratio. Right? Still pretty fucked up, right? Yeah. And our quote-unquote Fighting Girlfriend, that's what, like I said before, that's what she called herself, and I forgot her real name, decided she wanted some sweet revenge. However, I said she did it 3 times, but she only survived 2. she was shot on her third time. She was then posthumously declared a heroine of the Soviet Union, which is pretty much the highest award you can get in the Soviet Union. Yeah, there are also some pretty badass Soviet female snipers in the group as well, which was fairly badass as well. However, on the other hand, you have what the Russians did when they went through Germany. Let's not mention that, because first off, if we're going to cover that, I want to cover that in its whole other video. I don't want to have to, make it a side thing, because it's a really big thing to talk about. And secondly, it's fucked up. It is fucked up as hell. I recommend, if you honestly want to know about this before I tell you about it in another episode, I recommend picking up the Anthony Beevor book, Fall of Berlin, 1945. It's a fairly good book, too. He's also a fairly controversial author because of that book. And that's because the Russians kept disputing his claims. Yeah, the Russians were fairly adamant against his claims, which implies some really bad shit went down. But still. So yeah, the video's almost over, so I think I'm going to end this part here. Here with some historical fiction you can find. There are no real stories on Fighting Girlfriend or Ronnie Lakshmi Bai. And like I said before, Boudica does appear in Rise, Son of Rome. Oh, and there's Joan of Arc, but to be honest, if you haven't heard of any movies that she stars in, you haven't heard of any movies. Because movies about Joan of Arc are a dime a dozen, really. That plus, and the only reason I didn't really mention Joan is because she's already so well mentioned that I didn't feel like I needed to. You know? You can look her up, right, guys? Burnt the stake as a heretic, took back her country, that kind of stuff. So, yeah. There's no real historical fiction, which I would like to give you guys sources on. But like I said before, there's nothing about them. Same case as the last episode. But still, with that being said, this has been the Smellbringers saying if you like this video, please comment, like, rate, and subscribe. And if you have a subject matter you want me to tackle, then please tell me so in the comments below. And I shall see you guys next time.